Hello and welcome to episode 381 of Scarves Around the Funnel, the podcast dedicated to Scottish Premiership leaders, Heart of Midlothian. My name is Mark Donaldson. Hopefully, sometime later, we may be joined by Mr. Scott McIntosh. We also have the wonderful Mr. Ewan Murray, who wrote a lovely piece on Hearts beating Rangers by 2 goals to 1 yesterday. I understood most of it, but I haven't got a fucking clue what Hearts fairy tale continues at a vertiginous pace means. Maybe he, Mr. Ewan Murray, can tell me. Hello.
Hello. It means quickly, very quickly.
Why did you not put quickly then?
Like I was trying to be, it doesn't suit me, but I was trying to be smart, believe it or
Did you
not.
need a thesaurus, or did you have that as one of your quickly words associated with it?
No, it just popped into my head. My, my,
Very
my
nice.
simple rule is never to use a word I cannot articulate and say, but I can say vertiginous properly. So I was happy to use it. But yeah, I'm glad it gave you a smile.
This season is moving on at quite the vertiginous pace for Heart of Midlothian. Just one more game before the halfway stage. It
Yeah.
happens to be the Edinburgh Derby. It happens to be John Beaton in charge. So for every positive, there's also a negative. Today, we will look back at the victory over Rangers by 2 goals to 1. We will look ahead to the Edinburgh Derby and the last game of the season, sorry, of the year, the calendar year for Hearts. And speaking of the calendar year, what was your moment, your Hearts related moment of 2025? We'll get to them later. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, brought to you by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Okay, Heart of Midlothian 2, Rangers 1. When most of us heard the team news, it was not the suspended Harry Milne being replaced by Stephen Kingsley that was the surprise. That was expected. It was that Craig Halkett wasn't playing, replaced by Frankie Kent. And Derek McInnes went on to confirm that it was a knee issue which had come up on the Thursday. He'd been sent for a scan. Thankfully, it came back negative, and he's hopeful that Craig will be available for the Hibs game. So, Ewan, how did your confidence levels ahead of this game change, if at all, when you realised it wasn't Craig Halkett alongside Stuart Finlay, but Frankie Kent?
No, genuinely not much at all. I mean, I was as confident as you could be ahead of these games before I got to the ground. I saw Derek McInnes saying I expected Hearts to win the game, and I did too. I thought on all available evidence they were the favourites to win the game. Halkett not playing was a blow. I'm not typically Frankie Kent's biggest fan, although I thought, apart from a mistake at the end that was irrelevant, I thought he had a very good game. But I think Rangers are kind of powder puff up front, so I wasn't sufficiently worried by that one change in the team that I thought it materially affected Hearts' chances. And actually, even early in the game, when Miovski scores and it's offside, and you have that period where you think this might count, although because I was working and we had screens, I was quite confident quickly it wasn't going to count. But even that early on, and even when Hearts hadn't started, the substance of this team is such that I thought they've got plenty of time to recover from this. That if they suffer a setback here, they will recover. So I think all of that is just an indication of the confidence that I have and others have, and we should have in this team and what they're doing just now.
Let's forget about Rangers in the lower leagues and then when they came back up, and we of course played them in the championship. Let's forget about that era. Prior to that, I went into this game and I would have been disappointed if Hearts hadn't have won it. I was very confident
Mm.
of success. So prior to the kind of yo-yo years of Rangers, when would you say the last time we as Hearts supporters rightly went into a game against Rangers confident of victory?
Well, it came after that, but the one I remember that immediately comes to mind is Robbie Nielsen's last game of his first spell in charge, which was a midweek game at Tynecastle, and we beat them 2-0. Robbie Muirhead scored twice, I think, to
Yes,
go.
yes.
I think put us second top of the league. And Robbie left to go to Milton Keynes Dons, if not the next day, then a few days later. I remember going to that game. It must be unusual because I remember it, but I remember going to that game thinking Hearts will win this game. And I think then we hammered them 4-1 at Tynecastle a couple of months later. Ian Cathrow's finest hour, Jamie Walker, scored a great goal. So Anyway, to answer your question, it was that game in the midweek of Robbie Nielsen's spell. Before that, yeah, probably. I don't remember it, but probably the game where Bednar scored at the start of 2005-06 to beat them 1-0 at
Fair.
Tynecastle. That was probably one where you thought they should win. But what I do remember is even in 97, 98, which was a great team and a fantastic season, those games were tricky. And with great joy at Ibrox. Remember Rangers winning comfortably at Tynecastle towards the end of that season, for example. I don't remember the first game at home, but you never really had that confidence, and that's because we'll probably come on to this, but at that time Rangers had a very strong team. Um, but I just think again it's a sign of the position that Hearts are in that you're entitled to go to these games full of belief about what the team can deliver, even as I say if they suffer any kind of setback in the game itself.
Because our recent record against Rangers has not been good. So to
No.
go from that to where we are now, in that we think we should be winning these games, as someone that covers Scottish football for a United Kingdom national newspaper, The Guardian, you've watched a fair bit of Rangers and Celtic as well as having your season ticket
Mm.
at Tynecastle. Is this the poorest Rangers and Celtic have been together in many, many years?
Yeah, I'm always anxious not to say that. Uh, hmm. I use the word unconvincing a lot, and for different reasons. They are both very unconvincing. That's what I would say. And Derek McInnes made this point after the game yesterday. I thought it was interesting that I think he's a bit irked at the perception that Hearts are only doing this because the old firm are in a weak spot. And there's no doubt that has been a discussion. Well, there's two responses to that. One, Hearts have been terrific in their own right. Anyway, that's undeniable. And also, you roll with the dice that you're dealt. When Leicester won the league, I think I'm right in saying their closest competitors in inverted commas were Tottenham. Well,
Hmm.
no one decried Leicester were in the league because they said, "Oh well, Man City were poor, Liverpool were poor, Arsenal were poor." It was an epic, monumental feat that Leicester City won the Premier League in England, and the same is happening here. I think it's fair to say, on the one hand, that Rangers and Celtic, and it's true, this season have been in various states of disarray, and it's fine to point that out. And it's also fine to say that Hearts have, met every single challenge thrown at them so far. So I understand, again, Derek's an old school, old fashioned manager. I understand why he would use even the perception of a slight against what he's doing. But I think it's fine to acknowledge that we're in strange times with regards to how weak, in inverted commas, the Glasgow clubs are, but also that Hearts are doing extremely well.
Yeah, and I think both sides of the coin can be correct here because when Aberdeen went on that run last year, Celtic matched them. Celtic
Mm-hmm.
were not far away. This year, Celtic are a little bit further away. They picked up, they got that win against Aberdeen. But I'm glad you mentioned Leicester because Leicester did win it. Spurs were their closest up until the final day when
Mm-hmm.
Arsenal pipped them. But Leicester won that by 10 points.
Yeah.
Spurs 11 points back, and then Manchester City were 15 points back. You do need your opponents to be weaker while you are stronger, and you need teams like Motherwell to challenge and take points off the other sides. Do you feel the fear factor is gone right now when it comes to other sides facing Rangers and Celtic?
Yes, and I think Motherwell are a good example of that, definitely. Um, and listen, we're in this is quite an interesting point in time. I think, I know Rangers have a game in hand, but Hearts are 12 points in front of them right now. I think for the moment, we don't have to think or worry about Rangers. I think that win yesterday ensured that was the case because I also think that Rangers squad needs a very, very significant overhaul.
Soft,
With,
isn't it?
sorry,
It's soft. It's
yeah,
got a
yeah,
soft
but
centre.
it needs a complete change, and
Yes.
I'm not sure Rangers owners they keep using the word sustainability. I'm not sure they're willing just to throw good money after bad to change the squad, so that will take time. Celtic's situation is different and intriguing for different reasons. Um, they have the capability to spend a lot of money in January, and actually because they've made a mess of recent transfer windows, I think they will feel they have to spend a lot of money in January. But that's not guaranteed to work. And
No.
this manager, although in the last two games they've created a lot of chances and their XG is high, etc., etc., there are still elements around him that I would be pretty unsure about. And you'll know more about his background, Mark, and
Yeah.
I do, or most of us do. But it's only, I wrote this morning, Celtic's spending power is what makes them currently the favourites to win the league, and I think they are still narrowly the favourites to win the league because they could spend 20 or 30 million pounds. In a black and white world that works, but we're not living in one. So their situation is unclear to me, and I also think there's every likelihood that Hearts will have a very good transfer window, and Hearts will emerge
Mhm.
from January in a stronger position. So, I'm kind of fudging what question you asked me because I think we're living in pretty interesting times. But this period now, right before a transfer window, which is so hugely important, particularly to Celtic and a manager who's struggling to win over hearts and minds, will affect to an extent what Hearts do from January onwards.
You can have all the money in the world. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean you know how to spend it.
Well, as I said, they've made a mess of, I think almost by their own acknowledgement, they've made a mess of recent transfer windows. And also, the kind of necessity to spend money could trigger panic. They could spend a lot of money on the wrong people. And you're doing this mid-season. You have to sign players to fit this manager's system. They need wing backs, for example. They need a different type of centre half. I would argue they need a hard defensive midfield player, and they need a centre forward. These are big changes to make halfway through the season. So you're not guaranteed to get that right at all.
There's a reason we're elongating this chat before we get on to Hearts and Rangers, because it comes round to a question I want to ask you and shortly about what would constitute a successful season for Hearts now at this point, and what would be a disappointment. Just one final point about Celtic, because they're our nearest rivals right now. From what you've heard and the people that you speak to in those circles, do you think they will have the trust in Wilfred Nancy to allow him to spend 10, 20 million? Or do you think it might be a kind of game by game scenario right now? Because from what I've heard,
Mm.
Callum McGregor and the senior players at the football club do not want to be put up to speak to the press because they do not want to try and justify the manager's position because, from what I'm hearing, they're not convinced by him.
Yeah, I don't know that, and I don't want to go down that road. I'm not at all decrying what you're saying, Mark. I just don't know. I haven't been in that
Sure.
world. I find it interesting that Callum has not spoken over the last couple of weeks. He's normally a regular guy in front of the media. I found it telling that maybe he's just had enough. Maybe he doesn't want to speak, but that that did make me raise an eyebrow. Listen, it's a core point with Wilfred Nancy. If you take a team to seventh in the Eastern Conference of the MLS, again, you've watched far more of that league than I do, but when I'm over there, I watch it and I go to games. It has nothing like the competitive
No chance.
environment of Scottish football. It's just a different world, a different
Yep.
footballing world. So if you take out what we have seen even from his team, if you bring a coach from there and bring him into such an intense environment, it's a massive gamble. It's a massive gamble. And when you're doing that in opposition to, if you want from Celtic's point of view, a rogue element in Hearts, they wouldn't have expected Hearts to be this strong. They would think we can be better than Rangers this season, and that's probably not a daft point of view if you're Celtic. But Hearts are doing things Celtic wouldn't expect. Now, they may still expect the Hearts will fall away, and decades of history would back that up. But as I've said on this podcast before, Hearts are at the start of what I think is a hugely exciting journey. And if it doesn't fall right for Hearts this season, and it might not for a number of reasons, this team won't go away. So if I was Celtic and Rangers, and I know it's not a Celtic or Rangers podcast, but the whole topic is
Sure.
relevant to what we're
Challengers,
doing.
yeah.
Absolutely, I would be concerned, not to say slightly panicked about the competition they're going to face from Hearts over the coming few years.
And I love reading the comments from the Rangers and Celtic fans when, whether it's Scarves around the funnel, whether it's you, whether it's Hearts Standard, whether it's Barry at the Edinburgh Evening News talking about Hearts title challenge, oh, it'll never last. There is this dismissive element because it's not happened, not necessarily in their lifetime, but certainly since 1985, when Rangers or Celtic didn't win the title. That was the last time. It's just dismissed as, ah, we'll be fine, we'll be fine. Maybe not. And look, Spurs and Arsenal and Man City fans thought Leicester aren't going to win this title. And then the next thing
No,
you know, they're celebrating.
yeah, but Tony Bloom and Jamestown didn't exist in that previous world. That's the that's
No,
the that's the fundamental, essential point. You have a team and a club in Hearts who can now, and this is why it's important. Hearts can take advantage of opportunity elsewhere where previously they couldn't. And by rights, they still shouldn't because what they're spending in relation to these other clubs. So that would be the answer. Listen, there's a Celtic point of view, which is they've had this chaotic start to the season and they're only 6 points behind with a game in hand. Well, that's fine if you believe they can string together the kind of run of results that Hearts have done. And also, I think when you look from the outside, it's a fractured club. The chairman's just had to resign because of threats and abuse from supporters. Supporters are at odds with the board. The manager left and was castigated by Dermot Desmond. The whole thing at Celtic is not the way it should be. It's not cohesive or collective. So that's not pointing to an environment that's likely to be hugely successful. So yeah, we live in what I would regard as curious and interesting times.
It's great. And look, I did a piece on TalkSport earlier about Hearts. They're not interested in Hearts if Hearts aren't challenging for the title. But the
Yeah,
fact that Hearts have got Tony Bloom and the association and the fact that he's Brighton, then it's easy for them to find a link. And the whole point
but people
was,
people want it, Mark. I mean, I wouldn't be
yeah.
covering Hearts v Rangers or Celtic v Hearts for the Guardian if this. It's not it doesn't matter. It's Hearts. It could be any other club. It's the fact that this challenge exists. People elsewhere are looking and saying, "Oh, this is interesting," because candidly, for too long, it wasn't.
I thought you were going to say you wouldn't be covering Hearts against Rangers and Celtic versus Hearts if Tony Bloom and the Guardian hadn't have fallen out. That doesn't affect you, does it?
I can't really talk about that, but no is a simple answer.
Good. Let's move swiftly on. The whole point about the Talk Sport thing was me saying Rangers have spent 25 million. Barry Anderson wrote a piece about this today. Celtic have spent half that money, yet Hearts' two centre backs, Stuart Finlay and Craig Halkett this season, have scored more than Rangers' three strikers have. We signed Alex Swallow, who was a free agent, didn't even have a club. Stuart Finlay on loan from Oxford. Oisin McEntee was a free from Walsall. Borchgrevink was a free from Valerenga. 75,000 gave us Magnuson from Valur. Kizaridis on a free from Zemplin in Slovakia. That's possibly one of the best bit of business he's done in the summer.
How good? How
But
good? How good was he yesterday? He was
I
terrific.
mean,
Rangers panicked every time he got the ball.
he he has proper football people who know their stuff in the game and live and breathe football, saying he's a proper player.
Mm,
They can recognize how good he is. He'll make us a fortune.
yeah,
Kabangu was an obligation to buy. That was 300 grand. Kerjota was 150k from the Italian fourth division, even though they got promoted to the third. Braga was 430 grand. A massive signing was Lawrence Shankland, because that was a done deal for Rangers. If they wanted him, he would have gone. But
mm,
they had issues behind the scenes, director of football and everything like that. They also tried to get James Penrice back from AEK Athens. They were going to sign the boy Josh Mulligan, but he ended up about to go to Derby. That ended up not happening, and he went to Hibs. And our record signing at 1.7 million hasn't started a game yet, as you. So that's something else. It's not how many players you sign, it's the quality of the players that you sign. Some of these are straight into the side. Some of these, like Kerjota or others, it
mm.
might take a little bit of time. But just like McPate at St Johnstone, that's what this is all about. We're not going to get it right all the time.
No, but I think the strike rate will be high. I mean, I said it. I think I said it on here after Celtic Park. For all the fun we have with Braga, etc., Kizaridis, understandably, that second goal came from a left back signed from Partick Thistle, crossing a corner for a free transfer from Walsall.
Hmm.
To piece the team together and a team that's so cohesive and so strong, so robust, and has so much substance, I think, with what they have done. And bear in mind, again, I said it on here before, this is the early stages of Jamestown and Hearts. This is the start of this journey. Imagine how this is going to look in 18 months to 2 years' time. So, yeah, it's funny. And also, I should say, I was wrong in Shankland. I was completely wrong because I was not particularly keen on keeping him. I thought he was never going to reach the level of 2 seasons ago. Um, he was so out of sorts last season, and he was going to be a high earner, although it's not my money, of course. But I thought just move on, let this guy go, start again. And when the club kept him, I thought it was a mistake. I probably even said it was a mistake. But again, against Rangers, I thought he was absolutely fantastic. He looks as fit as he has ever looked. He's
Hmm.
buzzing about like a blue arse fly. His link-up play is fantastic. I know Butland gets stick, and rightly so, for the goal, but a year ago, Shankland wouldn't hit that shot. The
No.
fact he hits it and it goes in, and he is, I was completely, not for the first time, I was completely wrong about him. His signing has been really, really important to what is going on. And also, I think Derek McInnes rightly speaks to the players already in the building and the improvement amongst them. And I think that is fair comment. And in the case of Devlin, who has been exceptional, is very good management. But I also think naturally, if you're a football player, well, I know if the players you're bringing in are of a higher caliber collectively, that raises the bar, raises the standard. So the Jamestown thing, even indirectly there, has helped a lot of the guys who were already at the club.
Well, I saw when Lawrence Shanklin was substituted, he was kind of huddled over the back row of the seats, and him and James Wilson were having a good laugh together, and that can only help young James from having someone like Shanklin. But it's like the old song: you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And he didn't play against Aberdeen. We tried something a little bit different without him, and it didn't work. Albeit we didn't score. We created a lot of chances in that game and should have won. So I think you're spot on. It's not just
Well,
about Lawrence Shanklin. It's about who he
no,
can affect.
and I do think in January we need a different type of centre forward. I would like to see a powerful, strict, quick centre forward who's good in the air, big unit of a striker. I would like to see that different option brought in. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I don't know, but I think the team would benefit, including just to take a bit of the burden off Shankland, including even in some games just taking him off a bit earlier and giving them a breather. So I would like to see the attack boosted and changed a bit with that.
And I think it will be. I think they've identified someone who, from what I'm led to believe, might
That
be
was a
coming
good
in.
guess. That was a good guess, wasn't it?
Well, there's one or two that have been mentioned, but I think Hearts will get their business done early in January.
Yeah.
From what I'm led to believe, someone has already been over for a look around, and if everything goes well, then that might happen in the first week or two of the January transfer window. That would be a forward. There's another right back coming in. I think there's no secret about that. No idea who that is.
Well,
But I wouldn't.
that's suddenly interesting because Steinwinder has been so good in that position.
Hasn't he? Hasn't he?
So, I understand that's not his natural position, but I looked at that game yesterday and I thought, like you had heard, in fact, I think they've almost said they'll look at another right back, and I thought, is that really necessary? I don't know if the thing was in motion anyway, fair enough, but I'm not sure that's as acute a need as it was before.
Yeah, look, there's going to be players that get hurt, right? I mean, Craig Halkett missed out, albeit Frankie Kent came in and did well in the game, apart from the error. And he
Mm.
made that error against Celtic with a poor header away that cost us a goal there as well. It better not come down to goal difference at the end of the season. But he's not a bad
Yeah.
replacement to come in. But we're now in a situation whereby you're not going to keep the same team every week because there's going to be injuries and suspensions. As long as Kizaridis and Devlin get through the Hibs game without being booked, that'll take us to the halfway stage in the season, and the threshold goes from 6 yellow cards, of which they've both got five, up to 12 yellow cards for a 2 game ban. So it means they're suspension free until they get 12 yellows, as long as they avoid a caution in the Derby. And if either of them are booked in the Derby, they would miss the Livingston game at home. But I think we're in a situation where having a big squad, it's been all right so far because we've been successful. There will be players going out, but I think we were speaking last week about the 4-3-3 that we now play or have been playing recently. That's not going to work in all the games. The 4-4-2 worked in some games as well. So if we've got this big striker, or if we've got the winger who's coming in, Chesnikov, it gives
Mhm.
us options to do. And think about it as well. You've got Neuenhoff still to come back. Benny's now back. He came off the bench. You've got Aju, who should be back by the end of January. You've got McEntee in there. You've got Devlin in there as well. That's a lot of players to try and choose from. But that's a good problem for McInnes to have, is it not?
Yeah, but it's a test of management. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
I think there's players. I think it needs to be trimmed down a little bit, candidly.
Yep.
Um, the other thing, and this might be controversial. My other theory about another forward is Braga, who we all love and has had a great impact. He can be really, really ragged with his work sometimes. His touch can be poor. Basic things he can make a mess of. He doesn't shoot when he should shoot. There's a few touches too many. Again, I'm saying this from a position of delight and great strength. But if that burden was shared a little bit, or maybe he felt a bit more under threat in terms of his place and his position, that kind of thing would be useful.
Hmm.
Um, and definitely, I mean, Chesnikov will be a bonus, and everything we hear about him is very positive. I don't know if the plan is to get McPake in January. St Johnstone obviously are going for this title, which mean they're probably not very keen to see him go. But beyond that, I think one more effective wine player would also be very helpful to take the burden off Kizaridis as well. But generally, and again, I've made the point to you before, Mark. I think there is extra flesh in the squad that can be cut down, including actually just to make the manager's job a little bit more straightforward.
Hearts became the first team since Dundee in 1985 to beat the Old Firm in four consecutive games. Hearts haven't done that since 1959-60 when they won the Scottish Championship. They did win four times in the league against Rangers and Celtic in 85-86 and once in the Cup by 3-2, but they did draw a couple of games against Celtic that season. So there weren't four consecutive victories that year. But the stat I like the most, we've got 4 wins out of 4 against 4 different Old Firm managers, which is unheard of. Russell Martin, Brendan Rodgers, Wilfred Nancy, and Danny Roll. So
Absolutely.
how
And
how
also, I mean, sorry, another one that I found, I had to check it yesterday. Going into that game yesterday, Rangers had not lost an away league game
for
in
a year?
2025. They lost
Yep,
in Boxing
yep,
Day last year. And I thought,
yep.
we've just spoken about it. If you consider the state of flux stroke
Uh-huh.
crisis that Rangers have been in, how had they never not lost a game in the
Right.
anyway, that record thankfully has been put to bed, but that took me aback when I heard it.
It's a game we should be sitting here about to analyse that Hearts should have won by 3 or 4 goals with the
Yeah.
chances that we had. But we nearly went a goal down. And I suppose, look, when you're talking about drawing lines, our system isn't great. You've got to trust the lines. I can't say you've got to trust the lines here and then for the game against Kilmarnock say, oh, I'm not sure about those lines there. So we have Fisher Price VAR in Scotland. It is what it is. Finley's boot looked like it was just behind. Um, who was it that put the ball in the back of it? Miovski. So the
Yeah.
goal's chalked off. Speaking from a position of strength, because we've won both games comfortably at Celtic Park and at home against Rangers. There has been a similarity in both fixtures. It's been a slow start for Hearts, and I felt we were on the back foot at Tynecastle yesterday. We're recording this on Monday evening, and we kind of retreated a little bit. That's not a concern, is it? That it's taking us 10, 15 minutes in some of the games to get going, is it?
No, on the goal, I was sitting in the press box and a friend of you and I, Luke Shanley, was a few seats along from me, and Luke obviously had the Sky feed. And we both know who Luke supports, of course.
Hmm.
Um, and Luke took the cans off and said to me, he's offside. So as soon as Luke said it was offside, it was offside. That was fine by me. um, the slow start, I think the manager said Rangers' systems spooked him a little bit, that Rangers didn't set up the way, certainly from middle to front, he thought they would. I am of the opinion, especially with this Hearts team, that you just play the way you play and let the other team worry about you. But I think there was a bit of that. I think it was a bit of Hearts being a bit unsure about the way Rangers were playing, and that took a slight adjustment. Um, but no, listen, if we're worrying about 15, 20 minutes, and that's all it was. I mean, Danny
Oh, it's
Rose
not a
said,
worry.
what did Danny Rose said Rangers were fantastic in that spell? Well, I disagreed with that
No,
because
they weren't.
Swallow didn't have really
No,
anything significant to do, if anything at
nothing.
all. And I thought Kizaridis had two where he broke through and curled shots just wide when
Yep.
Hearts played good football and good build up football. And at that point, you thought, okay, if they just kick into gear with this, they can take this game by the scuff of the neck. And I actually think the more impressive thing is you're 2-0 up after 42 minutes. Well, you and I know traditionally, historically, you'd be a bit worried that there's a long, long way to go and Rangers can get back. When
Hmm.
that genuinely, I wouldn't have said it out loud, but when that second goal went in, I thought Hearts have won this game. They're not giving away this advantage in this position. Um, and yeah, listen, the mistake at the end, and I wrote about it this morning. I thought what was telling was how angry Kent and Swallow were at each other, with themselves, sorry, at losing that goal, losing the clean sheet. And that's how standards have raised and standards have changed. But I thought in the second half they contained Rangers very, very well. But for some loose finishing, they would have won by more. But it was nothing to I mean, you're nitpicking to say that it was there was much or anything wrong with that performance.
It's changed days indeed from a title challenge of 97-98 when Hearts led on New Year's Day by 2 goals to nil against Hibernian after Stevie Fulton scored twice in the opening 10 minutes. And then you're thinking, right, it's all guns blazing now. And then Andy Walker and Pat McGinley scored twice in the second half. And it was a 2-all draw. And it was a kick in the teeth. Now, 2-0 up, you felt comfortable because they just kept throwing on attackers. And I know we're getting ahead of ourselves because we haven't even got to the first Hearts goal yet. But I just felt every time Hearts had the ball and got it forward quickly, it looked like we could score. And our first goal came from indirectly a set play. And I know Hearts had scored 12 going into this game. I don't know if they count this as
No, I
a,
don't
a
know.
set play goal. I don't think they
Mm,
do.
right,
But I thought the first one was just a sexy goal.
brilliant, fantastic cross. As soon as I hit Finley's head, it was in the back of the net. Another reference point. I remember that '98 game well, and Hibs could and arguably should have won that game, but by the end of
Yeah.
it, the one we're talking about in the pub last night was 1991-92. Hearts thrashed St Johnstone 5-0 round about this time, just
Hmm.
before Christmas, and
Oh,
we're
that was the
top.
game that Tommy Turner went in goal, was it not?
That's right. Hearts went
Yep.
top. Hearts went top of the league.
Yep.
Then I'm pretty sure drew with Hibs, and then lost four out the blue. Lost 4-0 at home to Aberdeen, and the whole thing just crumbled. Now, if someone, we were talking about it last night, and some guys had vague memory of it, but some of your listeners could probably write in with what we still finished second that season under Joe Jordan, but that thing capitulated pretty quickly from I think a home trouncing against Aberdeen. The point I'm coming to slowly, not with vertiginous pace, is that this team doesn't look like doing this.
Very good.
It doesn't. This team doesn't look
No.
like it is that. And I said that when the comparisons were made to Aberdeen, which we all thought were erroneous. That I couldn't see Hearts falling off that cliff for reasons we've discussed. Celtic may well get stronger. Celtic may well spend enough money to buck up their ideas and win the league. That can happen, but I don't see this Hearts team. There's no evidence to say that they're going to disappear. You're going to tell me now about 91-92, aren't you?
I remember being at the game. We also lost a Scottish Cup tie at Broomfield, but we lost 2-1 after the 4-0 home defeat against Aberdeen. We lost 2-1 at Airdrie
That's right.
before a 0-0 in the Scottish Cup. And it came from nowhere because I remember the 5-0 game, especially at St Johnstone, when Tommy Turner went in goal after was it Lindsay Hamilton that got sent
Lindsay
off?
Hamilton, yeah.
And just a massive heart support because McDermott Park was pretty new back then.
Hmm.
And I'd never been to the old Muirton. Obviously, played against St Johnstone, won 5-0. And that was 28th of December. And then it was 1-1 against Hibs. Now, that was a January derby that was on Sky Sports because Martin Tyler was commentating on that one. It was when Ian Ferguson scored. Not the one that scored against Bayern, but the tall striker. And then Tommy McIntyre's penalty with the
That was
equaliser.
a back post left foot half volley. Yeah, I
Was.
remember that goal. I've taken you down a rabbit hole you never thought you would
You,
be going near.
yeah.
Sorry.
I don't normally need help to go on a tangent, but at
No,
least
but I
it's
mean,
Hearts related
it
this time.
was.
But the whole point is here that until it happened, because we thought, that, oh, the bubbles burst. This is what everyone else has said. The bubbles burst. They're drawn at home to Kilmarnock, conceding late on, going to Aberdeen, not putting your chances away, 0-0 at Motherwell. That's it. That's it. It's Aberdeen again all over. What a response since then.
Yeah, and I never thought that the again the inverted commas crisis was as deep as people made it out. The point in Motherwell, for example, was a good. As
Good
subsequent
point
events have
now.
shown, it was a good point. I mean, and Celtic in their troubled times, they lose at home to Hearts, they lose at Tannadice. So that wasn't happening. We drew a couple of games we shouldn't have drawn, but I didn't think the dip was as low as what people wanted to make it out to be, and it certainly wasn't as costly because we're not quite in the same position, but we're in a very similar position in terms of the league table than we were in at that point anyway.
But that was the analysis from others outside of Tynecastle, from non-Hearts fans that gave it this dismissive, "Ha, told you so."
Yeah,
But I thought
in fairness, I think people in Scotland are just conditioned with that because of what's happened over 40
it's
years.
fair. Yeah.
And some of it will be anti-Hearts, and that's fine. That exists.
I've
That's
seen this
okay.
movie before, though.
Yeah, but the that's it. That's the bubble burst. We're going to go back to normal service. I think that's how people have been conditioned to think because of what's happened in
Hmm.
Scottish football. I don't blame a lot of people for taking that point of view.
Second goal, 5 minutes later, 3 minutes before the break, McEntee and Braga involved. Players that shouldn't really be winning headers, Braga especially. I don't know
Mm,
what the Rangers defence is up to, but that's a good point you made earlier about last season. That's probably Shanklin taking a touch,
yeah.
to try to get
Falling
it
over the
back on
ball.
it. Yeah, but that's what confidence does. And Butland's made an absolute howler. For the chances that Lawrence Shanklin had, that's probably one that is more hope than expectation. After we went 2-0 up, he's missed a sitter.
Mm.
He's missed one that he's tried to side foot it into the corner, away from the goalkeeper, and it's gone wide. I have to say I was a wee bit not worried, but a little bit anxious that that was the chance to get three and maybe then get more. Put the game to bed, relax, enjoy yourself. Were you concerned at all when they kept throwing on forwards?
No, because I'm not sure. This will sound horrible. I'm not sure any of them are any good. So no, I wasn't particularly. No, I mean Fernandez had a header he should have scored. That was one clear cut chance I remember. But no, I wasn't really in that state of worry about it at all. The other thing on Butland, it was an error, but he also obviously doesn't think Shanklin's going to hit that, which is a credit to Lawrence Shankland. That even such an experienced goalkeeper thinks that's too tight an angle. He won't shoot to quote Archie McPherson. He won't let fly from there. But he had the confidence and the capacity and the ability to say no, I am going to hit it. And we know how it worked out. So yes, it was a mistake, but Shanklin forced him into that by having the audacity or temerity to take that shot on in the first place.
I understand why they were pissed off at the end with the concession of the goal. Frankie Kent just needs to get rid of that. And if he does, if he hoofs that into the wheat field, then the whistle goes. And I'm just glad that the referee, Nick Walsh, who I don't get him sometimes. I mean, how that's not a yellow card. Was it Diomande in the
Yeah,
first half? How he's got
yeah.
that's one of those that you're thinking the VAR might be checking that to see if there's anything in that to potentially upgrade that to a red. Well, you can't upgrade nothing to a red unless the referee's made a right arse of it. But that should have been a yellow card. It's just an erratic official. Thankfully, we're not talking too much about him, but we'll talk about Beaton later. But
I was going to say, are we having the ref segment now? Are we?
no, no. Um, so Hearts win 2-0. Okay. At the same time, Aberdeen are playing Celtic at Celtic Park. Celtic had 30 attempts, on target in the teens. And when Aberdeen equalised, it was rather funny. But then Celtic scored two late goals. So 6 points between Hearts and Celtic at the top of the table, with Celtic having a game in hand, which I think is at Motherwell next midweek, which will not be easy. Motherwell's next two games are against Rangers and Celtic. Motherwell in third on 30 points, 11 behind Hearts, having played the same number of games. Rangers a further point back, 12 behind Hearts with a game in hand, and in ahead of the Derby, which we'll preview later, 16 points back from Hearts at the top are Hibernian, with Aberdeen a further point back to complete the top six. So I want to go back to something which I intimated earlier, a question I have for you. What is a good season for Hearts now, given their position in the table? But more importantly, what would be a disappointment?
Yeah, I posted this last night, and I was only half joking that we're getting dangerously close to the point where I would be gutted or devastated. I can't remember what I said. If they don't win the league, we're approaching that territory. The thing is, we're emotional about it. So if it goes on for another month or so, and they're still in the hunt, logically you start to believe and dream that this might be the season that breaks the run. But in the black and white, a good season, second in the league, is a very, very good season compared to what your direct opponents in this case are spending. Um, Winning the Scottish Cup would be a fantastic season because we haven't won anything since 2012. But it's a multifaceted question that requires a lot of thinking because they've put themselves into this very, very good position. I mean, the whole atmosphere around the club and around the ground, around the pubs, everything is so high. It's terrific. And I've been determined from the start not to get caught up and worried about what might go wrong, just to enjoy it. Including because, as I keep saying, I think it will get better. But they're in that interesting pinch point now between it would be a blow if they don't win the league, and the logical, obvious answer that finishing second would still be a very, very good season for Hearts. So I don't know. It's not. What do you think?
I'm believing a lot more now. I went into that game thinking that I'm going to be pissed off if we don't win this game.
Yeah.
So if the fear factor's gone from facing the two Glasgow sides, and we've won the last four times, two each, we've played each other. I think what the results going to be against the other sides are the key ones. And I remember how I felt after that Hearts Hibs game in January the 1st, 1998, and it was a chance gone. I think there was a Motherwell game as well that we were ahead and we got pegged back when Tommy Coyne.
Tommy Coyne scored. Yeah, that was a 1-0. That was a 1-0 draw at home. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was another game where I thought, what might have been.
But
And
98,
look,
98 is interesting. Hearts should have won the league in 98,
they should have done.
but because we won the cup, no one, no one
Hmm.
cares. And again, I understand that you win the cup, you
We went
end up.
over this with Jim Jeffries, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly what he said.
What did we finish 7 points off the top of the league? But it kind of went wrong. Remember a game against Rangers losing 3-0, I think. That
March,
Motherwell
April time, we didn't play well.
that Motherwell game you talked about went to Easter Road and lost
Yep.
to what 2-1.
Colin Cameron got hurt.
Um, I thought I was a anorak with these things. You can and
Oh, Scott
Scott.
McIntosh
Oh, he's
is he's
incredible.
next level.
He was talking about Ruben Palazuelos at Falkirk the last time I was on. I was like, wow, where did that come from? Anyway, 98 was the missed opportunity that isn't regarded as that because of what happened
Yeah.
in May, in the 16th of May. Um,
S- s-
so
Sorry, I was
this,
gonna.
no, this could be similar.
On you
It's
go.
a similar type movie, isn't it?
It is, but I'm more optimistic this year because I don't think who we're up against are as good. I
No,
mean, look at what Celtic and Rangers had back then,
but the
and look
Hearts
what they've
team, but
had since.
the Hearts team, that Hearts team is an
It
excellent
was
team.
good, but it's still. I mean, right now, how many of those Rangers players would you put into the Hearts side? None. I
No,
wouldn't have
no,
any
no,
of them.
no, no, not at all. But I'm only saying that. I mean, David Weir, Gary Naismith, Colin Cameron, um,
Well, they were decent, but they were. It's levels, isn't it? It's levels.
Stevie Fulton, Neil McCann. That was a
Excellent. They were
and that was
very
a
good.
and that was a team that was built over. In those days, you could do it over a longer period of time. Jim told you about it. That was that team peaking, and they were a excellent, excellent team. So I think it is fair to say Celtic and Rangers were a lot stronger then, but I also think even
So were
relatively,
Hearts.
so were Hearts. Yeah,
So were Hearts. And look, it is levels, and I think right now there's nothing to fear. And I don't know the answer to the question what would be seen as a disappointment because earlier this season, Scott and I played the deal or no deal banker, and it was when we were nearly double digits ahead at the top of the league, and I put it out. I'll give you second place right now in a Scottish Cup win. Not only did Scott say no, but we put that out as a poll, and 50 odd percent of people said no as well.
yeah, that's interesting. I would take that, but I'm maybe
I would
overly.
have taken it then.
I am.
Now, second and a cup win, given our position in the table.
Yeah, but I'm a bit. I'm maybe again. You just get conditioned by what's happened. I still think if you could win the cup, finish second, which would be a real statement of intent. As long as it, there's also ways of finishing. We're leaping ahead of ourselves. There's ways of finishing second. If Hearts find themselves in a position where they're 5 or 6 points in front in April and
Yes.
don't win the league, well, that suddenly is very very painful, right?
Yes.
But if they finish second, Celtic spend all the money you think they'll spend in January. Celtic take off. Hearts can't quite keep pace, but finish a clear second. I think you'd say okay, and you've got a cup win. You know, we don't live in a world where you can predict any of that, but it would slightly depend on the circumstances to me.
Cup draws, Scottish Cup draws, probably over the past, I don't know, 20, 25 years. It's like, please, not Celtic and Rangers. This year, I don't give a fuck. I'm not see, but seriously, if there's nothing to be frightened of, and I'm saying the fear factor's gone. Of course, I want to get through Falkirk first because we drew them in the League Cup last year when they were a
Yeah,
lower league side and we got papped out. So let's just get through that first. But there's no team now, and this sounds flippant, but we shouldn't be, and we shouldn't have that mentality of, oh, it's failed in the past, it's going to fail again. This is different. This
yeah,
is not a Tony Bloom mentality. This is not a Derek McInnes mentality. As Lawrence Shanklin said, pressure. He said pressure was being at the bottom of the league last year and thinking, hey, if we go down, we're playing for our jobs here. That's pressure. Now, there'll be a different type of pressure. I was listening to BBC Radio Scotland podcast this morning. Stephen McGowan was on, and he was saying, look, there will be pressure that's put on Hearts because there'll be expectation put on Hearts that they haven't got right now. You got to remember as well, a lot of the headlines are being made by Rangers being in crisis and now Celtic and Wilfred Nancy. It went from Connect Four at Celtic, and then I saw them drawing lines yesterday for Rangers, like it was like a game of battleships. There's a lot of focus on those two teams right now. Once the focus comes on Hearts, if we're still top of the table, we have to decide, okay, how are we going to deal with that? Do you think we have the strength and the leadership and the quality of mentality at Tynecastle to cope with that?
Well, the boring answer is you don't know until you're in that movie, but I
Hmm.
think so from what we've seen. I use the word substance. This looks like a team of real substance. I don't see obvious weakness or softness or chinks in their mentality that make me think that there's a potential issue there. Um, but of course, I mean, look at Kizaridis' career, look at Braga's career, look at Steinvender's career. How are those, Oisin McEntee, how would these guys react to being in a title race in Scotland in March or April? I mean, how can you possibly predict that? We
They've
don't.
done all right so far. You know what? I mean, it's like in golf. You cover golf. It's like any high level sport. The fear factor is different depending on who you're chasing or who you're going up against. But you got to remember as well, someone who doesn't have the scars of failure and hasn't
Absolutely.
experienced this before has got nothing to fall back on. Not a case of, oh, we finished three times, we finished second before when we had the chance to win it, and is this going to happen again?
Oh,
This is
I saw this earlier. So, do you think the players I mentioned are going to care about Albert Kidd and Dens Park in May '86? They won't have a clue what that means. It
no,
means nothing to them. It means
no.
it means something to a certain generation and age of
Yeah, but
Heart
how far back do you want
supporters.
to go, Ewan?
Exactly, exactly.
I mean,
Right.
are we talking Norrie Davidson in kind of September, October 62, 63, winning the League Cup, and then every League Cup campaign since, Hearts haven't been successful. I mean,
I
yeah,
do
it's the
talk about
League
I do
Cup.
I do talk about that. That annoys me. I
What?
find that I find that embarrassing.
St Mirren in 2012 or whatever it was. Anyway, we're in a title race. If Aberdeen had held on for a point, there's some suggestion that the bookies might have made Hearts favourites. Right now, Celtic are slight favourites from Hearts, and then Rangers and the rest. But given that Celtic and Rangers are going to play each other, given Motherwell have got Celtic and Rangers coming up in the next two games, it's up to Hearts to do the job this weekend and finish the year on a high. We will preview Hibernian shortly. Before we look back on the moments of 2025 from a Hearts perspective, we have had an email at podcast at scarvesaroundthefunnel.co.uk. For Ewan Murray, I'd like you to answer this one. This is from Michael Hale. It's an interesting one. Michael says, it's obviously been a while since we last had a decent run to the top of the league, but I want you to settle a memory issue I'm having. In 2006, my memory of the song We Shall Not Be Moved is by Hibs, Rangers, or Celtic, We Shall Not Be Moved. What I'm hearing now, though, is by Hibs, the Celts, or the Rangers, We Shall Not Be Moved. Is my memory playing tricks on me, or has the song been changed, and if so, why? Long time listener, first time contacting, so I'd love to get an answer. Do you have an answer?
He addressed this to me.
No, but
All
you're here
right.
and I can't address it to anybody
Oh no,
else.
no. I thought you said this is for you and Murray. I am a bit of an oracle for songs. I would say, what was the first version? I would say Hibs, Celtic, or Rangers, or Hibs, Rangers, and Celtic. I
Yeah,
wouldn't
that's what he
say
said it used to be, but now it seems to be by the Hibs, the Celts, or the Rangers.
no. I don't recognise that latter version.
Okay.
I would go, but I'm like that with quite a lot. I don't understand half of what they're singing nowadays. That's one of the few I do know or hear or pick up the words to. But yeah,
Well, what I do know is every May, you and I get together on a Friday or a Saturday evening of the PGA Championship that we both cover for our
Philadelphia this
respective.
year.
We're going to Aronimink. But you know
Yeah.
what will happen? It's the same as has happened every other year. We get Spotify on, we get the Jambo Tribe on, and we if it's if it's a car with a roof down or anything like that, we blast out. What was the last a Henry Smith song? It's just tradition. We don't do tracks 19 and
My
20, the
my
audio
my
history of Hearts.
my pet hate on similar theme, and people do this, is those who sing it's down at Tynecastle they play.
Bide.
Yeah,
Who
but
says
people,
play?
more people than you think sing play.
Really?
Yeah, that's my particular annoyance on this same. theme.
Do do you have friends that does, or sorry, that do what my mother does, and she calls it maroon?
Yeah, I do. I even as a kid in Edinburgh, I don't remember that, but yes, I do. Well, that's a song as well. Have you heard of Heart and Midlothian? Have you seen them in Maroon?
And then the
The,
boys in maroon are the talk of the tune.
no, I never that one. But the late great
Exactly.
Pilmer Smith was a great man for that because he Lothian buses, and Pilmer's thing was the chairman of Lothian buses, a great Hearts man, but he didn't like maroon on a bus. He thought it looked dull and uninspiring. And I always linked the maroon and Lothian buses to Pilmer. But he used to say to me that maroon, I don't like that maroon on a bus. I can't remember the word Pilmer used, but he didn't think it was uplifting enough in the set as a bus colour. This is the best tangent ever. But Pilmer was a great man for maroon and white. Yeah.
So he would never say maroon, he would always say
No,
maroon.
no, no. I don't know whether it's a generational thing, um, but yeah,
Because we deviated from that color for a long time. I mean, those of you that are watching this, that shirt from behind me is from 84, 85, and that's a proper maroon. Then the dark maroon of the Coca-Cola Cup final, because of the rain and the snow and everything like that. And then we could never replicate that exact color. But now we seem to have gone back. Anyway, we're off on a tangent. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Your tweet yesterday was we're getting dangerously close to the point where I would be gutted if this lot didn't win the league. Swiftly followed by Australia's midfield must be unbelievable for this lad not to get into it. Immense again today, Cammy Devlin. But does Cammy feature in your moment, Hearts related, of 2025, Ewan Murray? What's yours?
yeah, I should be careful with public praise of Cammy Devlin because if anyone does look or listen to me, we'll end up losing them for a bumper contract offer. I fear that may well happen anyway. But
Johnny at the Rangers reviews like, oh, Cammy Devlin and get him signed and Stuart Finlay. And then I think the Scarves Around the Funnel response was they want to be playing in the Champions League next year, not the Conference League qualifiers.
yeah, on that, Devlin I would worry about because his form has been so good and he is that kind of player and he's out of contract. I worry a team in England would take him on a substantial contract. And listen, for him, that's fine. He doesn't owe Hearts anything, and hopefully he goes out on the most ultimate of highs. But he's been, I think there's a case to say he's been Scotland's player of the season so far
Hugely.
in 25-26. Moment of the season. Well, the other guys aren't here, so the obvious on-field one would be Halkett's win against Hibs.
Of
But
2025, though, and bearing
yeah,
in mind there was fuck all at the start of this, so
oh,
we
it's
kind of have,
a year of two halves, and
right?
I saw some replies when you posted about this about the day Neil Critchley was sacked, which I thought was a bit harsh. He was a nice man, it's just not in the right movie. I'm going to go. I'm going to say the day in May where it was made official that Tony Bloom had made the offer to buy into the club.
Hmm.
We knew that was coming. The Jamestown element was in situ, but that and I think that will prove to be a hugely significant moment in the history of the club and hopefully Scottish football. And I say that with a link to my job where I've kind of been increasingly depressed and despairing in recent years about Scottish football's lack of competition, a lack of jeopardy, and it needed something different. And obviously, I'm thrilled to bits that Hearts are, look like being the ones to provide it. But I think that seeing that, I still remember it in black and white on the website that Tony Bloom had made the formal offer to buy into Hearts. That was a moment you thought, wow, this could be different and could be different in a sustainable, proper, long term way. So that is my answer. Sorry, it's not a goal or a moment on the pitch.
No, no, it wasn't meant to be it was just a Hearts related. It could be anything, and given the history of people who were close to joining Hibs, John Robertson, and then ended up at Hearts. If there's a book ever written about Tony Bloom's involvement and we get the truth to come out, because a lot of us know what happened, there's a certain person who's no longer at Hibs but was at the time who had the opportunity to get Tony Bloom on board, but pissed off Tony Bloom to the extent that Tony's like, fuck this, and
Well,
ended up at Hearts.
Again, I don't know that, but what I do know is when he first spoke to Hearts, he said, I have some other Scottish clubs to speak to. So when he met
He'd
Hearts,
already spoken to Hibs by the time he spoke to Hearts.
it wasn't. What I mean is, it wasn't a given,
No, not
and
at all.
Hearts had obviously pretty quickly decided we have to do this, but
Hmm.
he was wanting to invest in a Scottish club, and it could have been for reasons you may or may not have just pointed to there. It could have been a different club and a different outcome, but yeah, I think it's going to work out pretty well.
I hope it does. It's certainly off to a good start. My moment is it's not an obvious one, and it's something that I really hoped it would live up to. And it's the Aberdeen game, and it's the crowd, and it's the performance, and it's the performance matching the crowd and the crowd matching the performance. Everything about that was just, I can't wait for kickoff. It was a Monday night. It was Aberdeen. It was Derek McInnes. It was he's where he wants to be. And remember the pre-match interviews, and of course it was around the time of the Tony Bloom stuff as well.
Mm.
And Tynecastle was a bear pit, and it was the rip snorting, up and at 'em. Wasn't always pretty, blood and snotters. It was what we hoped for under Derek McInnes. Of course, the most important thing was the 3 points, but it was the manner of that. And it was just important that everything that we thought we might get from a Derek McInnes Hearts side, that's what we got. And that's my moment of 2025. And it's done in mind with a lot of other people who've been in touch. And I'm going to read them to you. Barry Anderson from the Edinburgh Evening News just posted a video of Cammy Devlin having a go at Callum McGregor and with an emoji
Oh,
of a
he wound it. Callum McGregor
he
doesn't
wound
often
him
get
up.
wound up. He
He
wound him
wound him up.
up. I remember
That's
that.
Barry's moment. Yep,
Yeah.
that's Barry's moment from recently. Jersey Steve says, hopefully this Saturday coming. Amen to that. Tim Sanders, Nevada Jambo, easy. Our balloon bursting how many times? And we're still top on Santa's Day. Speckenbauer, you'll like this one. Plenty of great moments, but Barry Mackay being released was the icing on the cake. Poor Barry.
That's cruel as well.
I know that you were on the last time when you wondered where Barry Mackay is now. He's probably still counting his money. Chris Canning, the scenes after the late Derby winner, the heart song blasting with everyone singing along, McInnes singing We Shall Not Be Moved, people outside the ground smiling and jumping around. What a feeling, and that's what football is all about. Were you at Tynecastle that day, or were you golf working?
Sorry,
The,
which
the
game?
Derby with Halkett's late winner.
Yeah. That to me is the obvious on-field. The circumstances of that, you can't beat a last-minute
Hmm.
winner in a derby. I mean, that was a moment in time. There's no doubt about that. I think that would be the on-field. And bear in mind, as you said, everything between January and
Yeah,
May, there's not very much to
gloss over
pick.
that.
Yeah, it got a bit better after mid-April, but yeah, year of two halves.
Well, there's a couple of mentions here, and I mean, obviously, I've had a shitty 2025. Obviously, with Dad passing earlier this year, and I was home for his funeral. I went to Motherwell and the 0-0 game, and it was the week before the semi-final. And someone mentioned that I think it was Douglas Rankin. The
So that
most
was the top. That
important
was that was the top six gone, wasn't it, that day?
that was the top six gone that day, and Hearts travelled. The fans travelled in huge numbers
Mm.
to that game at Fir Park. And Douglas said the most important moment, bizarrely, could be the draw last season away to Motherwell, which emptied Critchley because it ensured a bottom six finish. Was that the game that made their mind up? Because if we'd beaten Aberdeen in the semi-final, are you going to get rid of a manager who's taking you to a cup final? We'll never know. But because we didn't, we kind of had to go through that hell of Motherwell away and the cup semi-final at the hands of Beaton to get to where we are now. Funny how football works, Ewan, isn't it?
Yeah, my views on Neil Critchley are he wasn't as bad as people portray him as, but he wasn't going to be a medium or long term solution. He didn't
He was our
understand.
Wilfred Nancy. He was in the wrong movie.
Aye, but you also have to remember the absolute mess the team was in when he took over. He did improve them and get them out of that what was a really perilous position because they had such a bad start to the season.
And the
So
Ammonia Nicosia night was special.
yeah, but he I think the key thing was he didn't get the significance of the club and the significance of certain
No,
games, and
no.
that's an affliction that a lot of people coming into Scotland from England have. And I also think it was kind of reading between the lines. It was clear he wasn't completely bought into what Jamestown wanted to do. Harry Milne's a good example. Harry Milne, I think I'm right in saying, played once as a left-sided centre-back at Celtic Park.
Yes.
And I thought, and I think I got the impression there was a bit of resistance there. So that wasn't going to work. And actually, the Motherwell game, I remember, that was the weekend of the Masters. So I remember that weekend for a lot of reasons. But I watched that game, and my feeling was, which was quite a bad place to be, if this team gets in the top six, it doesn't really matter because that's going to be pretty miserable for the next 5 games anyway. I was
Hmm.
I was pretty confident they weren't going to get relegated, so they were going to see out the season rumbling, easy for me to say, rumbling around in the bottom six. But I thought if they somehow get into the top six, it's going to be pretty miserable. And the Aberdeen semi was the point. A lot of things went against Hearts that day, and that was the day that I just worked out or finally thought Neil Critchley is on the wrong side of too many of these small defining moments. Every one of them went against them, and that's not good. That's not good for the future of a manager. Um,
I remember his comments after the Motherwell game. Ah, 0-0, point away. It's not a bad result. And you're just like, no, no, not when you need to win to get into the top six.
I think the die. I think the die was definitely cast at the semi-final. It was a home game against Dundee, though, wasn't it? It lost at home and he gets sacked straight after that, which must have been the first game of the bottom six. Am I right in saying? Because that was the last game in 90 minutes we had lost before the game at Pittodrie.
No,
April
that's
the
right.
I want to say April the 12th or something of that, maybe later.
The Halkett header from HMFC France, a late winning goal in a derby is always a treat. We had that from a few people. Craig Morris killing off Rodgers and last minute win versus Hibs will be up there for most. But the moment for me was when Shankland re signed. That was the turning point from letting go of last season and being filled with positivity for this season, which hasn't stopped since Shinnie's own goal. And that ties up nicely to things that Ewan and I were
Mm.
talking about. Ian Gordon taking my daughter to her first Hearts game. Craig Gordon's testimonial. It's funny, I was talking with my daughter the other day, and she's like, "Daddy, I want to go to the football." It's a lot harder for me than it is for Ian taking his daughter to the Sunderland game for Craig. But she's no longer frightened. She like when Hearts score and I shout or scream or whatever. She doesn't like it, but now she's buying into it and she wants to know how Hearts are getting on. So that'll be special when it happens.
You know that
Jason,
you know that game. As you know, I'm a program anorak. The program
yes.
from the program from Craig Gordon's testimonial game is very tricky to source.
Well, there weren't that
I,
many. There weren't that many. I think he only printed like 3,000 or something,
I
didn't he?
think that was the well, maybe it wasn't a mistake the way it's gone, but one for listeners or you to bear in mind that if that program
Mm,
comes up,
keep it.
yes, very much so.
Okay. I'm still looking for Lincoln Hearts 1967 to complete my 60s friendly collection, and that is probably the hardest game. And
I started. I go through spells of programs, but about a year ago, I decided to complete the entire 59-60. It's funny how this might come round, but I wanted to complete the entire last championship
the
season.
league
All
winning season, yeah.
not just league games, but league cup, friendlies, everything. Um, and there's an away game at Airdrie and an away game at Clyde. Are the two now I don't have from that. Partick Thistle didn't produce a program that season, so that one doesn't exist. But I've got everything else from that season, bar away at Airdrie and away at Clyde, which are tricky programs to get. Um, but yeah, it has crossed my mind that I hope I'm starting another or trying to complete another collection in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I'll not talk about the 20 copies of Zheleznyka against Hearts that I seem to have in the attic because we had no idea at the time. We just all kind of took two or three and got a few more than that. Anyway, Jason says Neil the Mouse Critchley getting his jotters. The butterfly effect has been incredible. Gorgie always, when McInnes was announced and more or less changed the culture of the fan base and club with one press conference, the most overdue appointment in history. That's a good shout, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, I've got egg on my face because I had real reservations about Derek McInnes as the Hearts manager. I didn't think he'd done enough to earn a job, basically, and I worried about how he would work in the new world that Hearts were in. But he has been, and let me say, as you know, I'm delighted, I'm thrilled. There's no one happier than me to be proven wrong in this case. But he's been almost faultless in what he's done in this job so far. And it must be difficult for a old school, I mean this kindly, a manager of his ilk to adapt to the methods that Hearts are using. And it's also actually, I think, a guy who's due so much praise is Graham Jones, because he has to hold
Hmm.
together the Jamestown side, and he deals with all that stuff and link it to what Derek McInnes and the team are doing. So yes, I hope the appointment of Derek McInnes will go down as a massively significant thing for the club, but so far so good.
I remember having a WhatsApp conversation with Joel Sked. It was the night before he was going to print with an article he'd written about why Derek McInnes was the man for Hearts. And this was before he was the favourite or anything like that. This was just Joel picking out him. And
Mm.
here's the identikit manager Hearts need, and here's why Derek McInnes checks all the boxes. And this came about as a result of an off-the-record conversation that Joel had with Derek. I'm not going to say what was said. Joel didn't express too much of what it was, but he got the impression from that off-the-record chat that this was the job that Derek had been after for a while. And I had that backed up by someone I know who knows Derek McInnes very well and said, this is the job that he wants. Now, were we skeptical of certain things? Yeah, some of us might have been, but ultimately, that press conference, and I don't know if you were there or I'm sure you would have seen it,
Mm.
what he said was just everything that we wanted to hear. And talking about it's one thing,
Yeah,
but
you
he's
have to
put it
back
into
it up.
practice. You do.
You have to, and you have to back it up. And it started that night you're talking about. It start if it had fallen flat that night against Aberdeen after what Tony Bloom
Hmm.
had said and what Derek McInnes had said he considered Hearts should be, then you're behind the eight ball to start. And it took the start of the season. It was still a little bit fraught. The St Mirren game, the League Cup was a disappointment. I still remember vividly half time in Livingston where Hearts had been really poor. And second half they came flying out the traps. Braga scored early on. Got a late winner, great goal, Kizaridis. I think kind of from that point it took off properly. But you're right, there's words and there's actions to back up what you're promising, and some managers can't do the second part.
And as much as Derek McInnes was excited about taking on the role, I don't think even in his wildest dreams he would have predicted that on Christmas Day, when you open your presents, that Hearts will be sitting on top of the tree. Because that's just something that you dream about that, but you never think it's going to actually happen. Scott Thompson, huddled around my phone with the boys on my mate Ross Kelly's wedding day, watching Craig Halkett fire in the winner from that Carjota cross. Scenes, and he's got a picture to the Scarves Around the Funnel Twitter account. The things you do, whether it's weddings or whatever, just to get a glimpse. Ross McDermott doing the 5-1 with my childhood hero. Gary Mackay on my stag do at the hospitality in January. Tron Halsved, best moment of 2025, losing to Aberdeen in the semi-final. We would have likely been humiliated in the final, and Derek McInnes would never have arrived in the summer. Thank you, Neil Critchley. Northamptonshire Hearts, Halkett winner against Hibs. That's been the main one. But they say the goal was great, but the importance to him as a player in the eyes of the fans cannot be underestimated, as he was one that most thought would be out the door in the close season. I remember he was linked with Dundee, he was linked with Kilmarnock before they realised that his knee or his body was never going to deal with that. He's got to be one of the stories of the season as well for a player who thought to himself, you know what, I need to get myself in the best shape of my life. The work he did and the sacrifices he made in the summer to come back in the shape that he did to now be one of the first names on the team sheet is phenomenal.
It's funny, a lot of people say that was a header against Hibs. It wasn't. It was actually a very, very good back post finish with his boot. People have said it. People have said it here, but I've heard it quite a lot. I think Derek McInnes actually said it after the game. It was a header.
That's right.
It was actually a really good finish, and it was
It was. It was
unbelievable.
a volley, half volley.
He was a striker Halkett when he was young, and you actually
He was, yeah.
you see that
Rangers Academy.
you see that in how he plays, and it was an unbelievably good cross from Kurjota. Yeah, Halkett's been terrific, and I very much hope he signs a new contract and stays. Whereas I think, as you touched on, I think there was a period where you would shrug your shoulders slightly if he left, and that was never to do with how good he is as a footballer, because he's so good in the air. There's not many I've seen
Hmm.
better than him in the air in both boxes, and he's calm and he's composed. But he just felt his body wasn't robust enough to play
Yep.
the number of games you wanted. Robbie Nielsen for a spell got him, I remember, and he was really, really fit. I remember saying to Robbie at the time, "You've done well with him," and Robbie said, "It's not me, it's all him. How he just looking after
Hmm.
himself." But then I thought he obviously had a couple of injuries, and then it's harder for him. But you're right, he's got back, and he's due all the credit to the point where he's at he's a hugely important part of the team.
We mentioned this couple of months ago on Scarves Around the Funnel. It was Alan Kernahan, the former St Johnstone captain, when he was a youth coach at Rangers, that saw Halkett playing up front and thought he was all right, but he thought he'd be an even better defender. So he was the
Mm.
one that made the suggestion to Craig, why don't you try out as a defender? And the rest, as they say, is history. Two more from your moments of 2025 that we've picked out from Josh Ingles. 6-0, Dundee away was unreal. That was just a weird, weird game. When it could have been more, but there was a swagger about that team that
That
day,
was
was there not?
Cabangu played like Pele, didn't he?
Phew,
But
jeez.
what I mean, that was yeah, but they just never did that again. I
No.
remember, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Critchley then messed about with the formation a little bit after that, didn't stick with it, and that was a high point from which you thought, okay, they might kick on, but they went the other way.
See, when you think of that team, Adam Forrester started, Musa Drana started, Jamie McCart played, Lewis Nielsen played, Blair Spittle played, and Kabangu played as well. And it's not quite exact, but it's similar to that team that beat Celtic 4-0. You're like, who played?
Mm.
When that stopped Brendan Rodgers' run at 69 or something like that. That was just weird. 1st of February when we won 6-0 at Dundee, and then it was the Scottish Cup win on penalties after that, and then changed things, lost against Rangers, and just a meandering season. The final one, Willie Jimison's left foot. Was it a left foot strike or a right foot strike that he scored when they were building the stand in the last minute
Oh, that's
against
a good
Celtic?
that's a good question. It must be left if that's what he's called,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't stake money on that one.
Yeah, apologies for all these tangents, but at least they're Hearts related tonight. Willie Jimison's left foot says Tony Bloom investment in JTA. Finally, we actually have some real hope that our club is heading in the right direction. And thank you to Mrs. Anne Budge for laying the groundwork down for all of this to happen in 2025. And as Ewan Murray said earlier, this is just the start of the Jamestown analytics. And yeah, we've probably achieved a lot more than we thought we would have achieved. And yeah, the expectation level has risen right now. But now we've got to believe that we belong. And if we do, then who knows what might happen. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest, Hepburn, and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. And when you have a lot of tangents, you clearly go over. So we will finalise today's show with myself and you. And apologies, Scott McIntosh sends his. He's having Wi-Fi issues. And Laurie Dunsar was hoping to join us as well, but his wee man is not feeling great. So hopefully he feels better soon. Couple of things, just as kind of point of interests. Hearts have had several of their games rescheduled now, thanks to live TV coverage. And it means that four more matches in the new year have been selected for TV coverage. Dundee United Hearts will now be on Saturday, January 31st at 8 p.m. The following Tuesday, we're at St Mirren again in midweek, again 8 p.m. kickoff. The following Tuesday is an Edinburgh Derby against Hibernian on a Tuesday night at 8 p.m. And then Sunday, February 15th. Rangers against Hearts at Ibrox live at 4:30. What that means is for those of you going to Tynecastle on Saturday, the 3rd of January, the first game of the new year, that will be your last 3 p.m. Saturday kickoff until at least the 21st of February when Hearts are due to be at home to Falkirk. And I say due to be at home to Falkirk that day at 3 o'clock. The TV picks for that section of the season aren't out yet. So you know what it's like. You cover a lot of Rangers Celtic and Hearts this season as well. If you're a successful side, you don't often play at 3 o'clock on a Saturday. It's like the NFL. If you're 1 o'clock on a Sunday, then you're not having a great season. It's not a bad thing, though, is it?
No, it's not. I think also a lot of these games are Premier games, aren't they? So if Sky haven't maxed out, they must be quite close to their Tynecastle quota already. So they're
Yeah, they've got
showing
one left at Tynecastle.
right. So that's
Um,
why that's why, for example, the game at Paisley is a Sky game. The game at Tannadice just before it is a Sky game. So they're picking up Hearts games away from home that they wouldn't ordinarily
yes.
have any cause to be bothered about. So that's the kind of minutiae off that one. I hadn't actually realised how tough a run that is between end of January, middle of February. That's going to be pretty hectic. But yeah, listen, it's a not the price of success, but it's a consequence of success, and that's why it's happening.
Yeah, but we have four of our first five games in 2026 are at Tynecastle. Livingston at home, trip to Dens Park, and then a run of three consecutive Tynecastle games. St Mirren at home, which is the rescheduled one. Falkirk in the Cup, another Saturday night, 8 o'clock, and then 3 o'clock on a Sunday against Celtic before the trip to Tannadice. So can't
They
have any
also they
excuses.
also they did a smart thing. It's easy to say it now because they won, but they did a smart thing, agreeing with Falkirk to move that game forward. That would
Yes.
have been between Hibs and Livingston because you could do without that scheduling at this time of the year. So playing that, getting out of the way and playing so well, obviously it looks better. But that was quite clever, moving that game away from next week.
So the Edinburgh Derby on Saturday before we wrap up. It wasn't until I saw that John Beaton was going to be referee, and we know his record when he's in charge, Hearts is not good. I thought, I wonder the last time Hearts won away from home with him in charge, and it was exactly to the day, 27th of December 2023, when both Hearts and Hibs missed penalties, and then Shankland scored the winner. It's not ideal, but his performances in Edinburgh derbies haven't been that bad. We don't want to be in a position where we're talking about the referee afterwards. How do Hearts approach this game on Saturday, Ewan, after Christmas, knowing now we have an even bigger target on our backs being top of the table?
Well, just on the referee thing, I don't particularly like the way John Beaton referees. I think it's too much about him, um, even just the way he carries himself. But the bigger point, I think, and the more significant point is what looks like a lack of accountability at the refereeing department of the Scottish FA. John Beaton was the VAR for,
He was Rangers Levy.
yeah, now to me, that's in the top two howlers of the season. He has continued to be involved in top flight games since, including this weekend, what is the biggest game in the country. Now, I'm not saying you put the guy to Siberia for 6 months, but I think there has to be a bit more visible accountability
There's no consequence, is there?
for a decision as bad as that. And even the
Hmm.
stranger when it emerges that John Beaton was the guy phoning up the Livingston manager to apologise and not the head of referees. I thought, hmm.
Yep.
And the other part of that is Andrew Dallas, who was involved in what I believe was the main howler of the season, which was the game between Falkirk and Dundee, where Dundee should have had a penalty that instead became a free kick to Falkirk. He was the VAR. He routinely does that every week, sometimes twice a weekend. And there we have him on Saturday. I don't know if you've seen it. He disallows a submitting goal against
It's
Livingston.
embarrassing.
Right. So again, I look forward to seeing where the obvious element of accountability is there. So that is my broader concern. I think as Hearts as a club, we need to try and rise above it and get on with the game and not have too much focus on who the referee is. The challenge here is the challenge here is that Hibs will be so desperate, so determined to put a spoke in the Hearts wheel, and it would be the same the other way around. When there's so much talk about your city rivals, when things are going so well, and when Hibs actually, from what I've seen and heard, have flattered to deceive, haven't won games they should have won, a kind of mediocre season so far. It's like a cup final for them. They'll be absolutely desperate, and this is understandable. It would be the same in reverse. They'll be absolutely desperate to stop Hearts at their ground on Saturday. So that's the challenge. The challenge is understanding the magnitude with which Hibs will place this game.
I think if you're wanting good football, quality football, and a watchable product, I'm not sure that Hibs Hearts is that game for you this weekend, based on recent history. The 2-1 game when Iredale scored the winner the last time Hearts were at Easter Road wasn't a good game of football.
Yeah.
John Beaton was in charge of that. Prior to that, it was the James Wilson equaliser 4 minutes from time. Hearts didn't play well in that game. And I don't think either side played well in the Beaton game before that when Lawrence Shankland scored the penalty. Scored the goal in stoppage time after missing the penalty earlier. So how far back do we have to go? Is it the Scottish Cup tie when we won 3-0 in January 23 under Robbie before everything just kind of tumbled around us? Would you say that was our last decent performance at Easter Road?
That's a good question. Hadn't thought about that. That was Toby Civic scored right at the end.
It was right then when he went on the Maisie, yeah.
Um,
Because since then, it's not been great.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it in that context. Probably you're right. I mean, in terms of the overall picture of the games themselves not being good, the stakes are high. Rangers Celtic games quite often, although they're built up to be something else, are dreadful games. There's so much at stake, so much noise around it, so much intensity. They're probably not by design, they're not beautiful football games, and you don't care ultimately if your team wins. I mean, when we had 22 games in a row, how many of those games were cracking games? Not very
Not
many, I
many of
wouldn't
them at
say.
all. Yep.
But you didn't care because you didn't lose. So I wouldn't bother too much about that. But you make a good point about a overdue dominant performance at Easter Road, and Hibs. The game at Ibrox, for example, last midweek, it seems they play well, they have Rangers worried, but don't score and lose the game. A point at Tynecastle is not a bad result. But the game at Ibrox, I think, from what I pick up, sums up a season for Hibs where they're flattered to deceive, but they have it in them to play well. Obviously, they still have decent players. But I just think Hearts, with the run that this team is on, with the confidence this team has, with the confidence the support has, should have full belief in what they're doing going down there, and no worry, no not being hung up or worried about what Hibs are going to do. I just think you have full belief and full confidence in what you're doing as a team right way at the top of the league.
Prediction time.
I'm hopeless at this. I don't know why you keep asking me.
You'll get it right one day. Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Eh, they'll put their clean sheet thing right, having been so annoyed at losing a goal. So I think Hearts will win 2-0.
And a goal scorer.
Shankland and the on form Stephen Kingsley.
Okay.
The team's
With him,
interesting. The team, like, does he put Milne back in? Halkett,
that
I
was
assume.
that was the next question.
Yeah, I mean, I assume Halkett plays if he's fit. That makes sense. I
He
would, I
put he
would,
put he puts Milne back in.
yeah, but I
Sure.
would. Kingsley, Kingsley would be a bit unlucky given what he did at Falkirk and how he played against Rangers. I wouldn't feel strongly either way. It wouldn't bother me. But I think, and also Kingsley's experience. There's a
But you can bring him
conversation.
on. You can bring him on like you did at Falkirk. I
That's
think
true.
you play your best players, and that was
Well,
the
does he
next
does he
question.
does, does he play? He clearly has huge affection for Beringame, and he spoke about it again yesterday. Does he put Benny in the midfield somewhere? I wouldn't,
Neither
but
would I. Neither would I. I don't think he's had enough game time yet. I think you keep it as is.
yeah, no, I agree. But that's
It's an option. It's a
I
great
think
option to have.
I think when the team is playing so well, you leave as much of it alone as you possibly
Yeah,
can.
and
Uh,
he does that as well. And we've seen now Steinventer's performances at right back have been fantastic of late. So that he picks himself there. I think
so
the
it's
team
two
pretty much picks itself.
two
Two
changes then.
changes, yeah.
Yeah,
Halkett back in for Kent and Milne back in for Kingsley, and I don't think there's anything else you need to do. Plus, they're without three players who are all the way at AFCON. Chaiwa in the middle of the park, Obita and Bashiri. And they had a lad on loan from Charlton who played at Dundee United. I watched that game at Tannadice. They had a lot of the ball, but they kind of flattered to deceive in front of goal. Cadden on either side of wing backs because you'll play a back three,
hmm
and neither of those, Chris or Nicky Cadden, they're not great defenders. That could be, I think, if we can stretch it with Kizaridis and Braga either side of Shankland and pin them back. But I think set plays as well. I'm going to go 1-0, and I'm going to go Finlay. He's got this kind of thing now with Halkett. They're both on 5 goals, and I think they've got some sort of personal bet as to who gets the most goals. And I'm seeing a lot of different routines now again from Hearts from a set play, whether it's a corner or free kick. We went through a spell where it just didn't look great, and it kind of takes me back to the game at the weekend against Rangers. We didn't have Harry Milne to deliver an in-swinger from the corner of the
that's a good point.
Roseburn and the main stand, and Kizaridis took a couple and they were shite, and McInnes was raging at him for one, and it was our third corner, I think, which was taken short that led to the opening goal, and it was from the other side. So
Whereas
yeah,
you
we're
want, I assume he had Kingsley in the box because he's a threat. I
yeah.
don't know. I don't remember, but he wouldn't take the corner because he would be
No,
in
he
there
had
to score a
Kizaridis.
goal. Yeah.
And I think it was not Kizaridis that actually took the third corner as well, but it was taken short and then the back heel from
Yeah.
Braga, the delivery in, and then Finley's header. So I'm going to go for another set piece goal, and I think Hearts will win by 1-0. And I think Stuart Finley will get it. So thank you to everybody for getting in touch. We will have one more show for you prior to the bells at Hogmanay. Hopefully next week, talking about a Derby victory over Hibernian at Easter Road and potentially an increase in our lead at the top of the table. It's been quite the calendar year. It started off mundane, but it got better, and it got better very quickly, or maybe at vertiginous pace. Bye for now.